Alright, welcome back everybody. This is GTM. Whoops. We're going to be finishing up our still life video labs or tutorials, and we're on our last model here. So this is, I believe, part 5. So we are doing the organic green apple, right? So let's go ahead and launch up 3D Max. Alright, in our front viewport, let's go ahead and put our reference image. I'm going to hit Alt B. And I'm going to look for that reference now. I believe it's in my drive. Let's, sorry if I'm throwing in some sound effects there. Alright, our still life, we got our reference images, and there's our green apple. Alright, so I'm going to match the bitmap, lock zoom pan, press OK. So I can zoom in and out, and I'm going to hit my G key. Alright, let's go ahead and just knock this out really quick. Alright, so we're going to go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and just throw a box in here. And now, sound like a cat there for a sec. Now I can actually either throw a sphere or a geosphere and just kind of warp it out. There's a couple different ways we can do this, but I just want to get you guys used to cutting into your geometry. So I'm gonna hit my G key to get rid of that, and F4. All right, let's go ahead and convert this to a poly now. So I'm gonna convert that. Right click, editable poly. I'm going in my edge mode here, and from here I'm just gonna highlight through, connect. Let's go ahead and grab a couple more down here. I'm gonna highlight through these edges, connect. Whoops, I didn't grab them. There we go, connect. And let's go ahead and shape this out. So I'm gonna grab these vertexes here and use my scale tool. And of course, if you're used to using your hotkeys, feel free to. Alright, so there we go. And remember, I'm scaling this in uniformly, so I'm going to grab those verts and just kind of raise them up a bit. Something on the lines of that. Alright, from there, I'm going to go ahead and you can grab any edge, one edge, ring it if you'd like, or you can highlight through, whatever you're comfortable with. I'm going to connect here, and with my scale tool, scale that out a bit. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to ring it on this side, or just, let's just highlight through. Whoops. Let's just go ahead and highlight through, connect. And my perspective here, I'm on my y-axis. You're just rounding it off. As you can see, we kind of got a round, or we're somewhat rounded off, kind of like a diamond. Let's shape that out a little more. Let's grab these and scale them in. Something like that. I'm going to grab those and just scale them in slightly. And possibly just raise these verts up. I'm just shaping out the bulk. Alright, that looks pretty good. Alright, from here, let's go ahead and start shaping this guy out. So I'm going to go ahead and throw a turbo smooth right on top. And I'm going to go about 2 iterations. As you can see, we got it's kind of shaping out like an apple here. If we needed to, we can kind of scale it up to fit the image. Alright, so let's go ahead and go to our vertex mode, show end results, and let's grab this these vertexes here. We can probably just kind of pull these down slightly, and I'm just kind of manually shaping this out. As you can see, I'm warping it out, and we haven't even got to our soft selection tool yet, so I'm just kind of helping it out here. Let's get this last vert here at the bottom. Let's raise that up, bring some of these down. There we go. Oops, excuse the phone going off. Let me go ahead and stop that really quick, and I'll get right back to you guys. Alright, I'm back here. Sorry about that. Had a important phone call. Alright, so now we got this somewhat kind of shaped out. As you can see, it's looking more like an apple now. Alright, so let's go ahead and help it out just a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe crank it up. No, not yet, not yet. But I am going to collapse it one level down. And let's convert that back to a poly. And now with our soft selection tool, as you can see when I turn it on, it's right here. Now remember, your soft selections are in all of your modes, so it's all there in every mode. So I'm going to go ahead and select one, and as you can see, when I have my soft selection turned on, if I crank up my fall off, you can see how much more it affects you know, the vertices that are basically surrounding the vert that you selected. So I can actually kind of shape that out even a little bit more. You know, I can grab certain ones and pull them out, shape it out. Maybe I'll grab this one and bring it in. I'm going to keep this at a 20 though. Alright, let's go down here, and I can probably grab some of these and bring them down slightly. As you can see, I'm just shaping this apple out a little bit more. So there you go. Not that I shaped it exactly like the reference image, but just so you get the idea. Alright, so there we go. Let me hit F4, and of course, if we wanted to, you know, we can probably just throw one last turbo smooth on here, since it's just a still life, you know, to get that look. So there we go. We got slightly an apple. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build the stem really quick, and you know, we can just use a simple cylinder, and I'm going to go ahead and you know what? Let's scale this out a little bit too. Let me center this. Activate my pivot point. Center it to my object. That way I can kind of scale that out a bit. Alright, yeah, let me go ahead and drop a cylinder here. And let's go ahead and I'm going to lay that down, raise it up. Just like that. So notice I have it off to the side, just so you can see what's going on. And I'm going to center that right up on top. Now, if I wanted to, I can, you know, let's hide this. And I'm going to throw this right where that is. I mean, you know, the stem of the apple here. Alright, so I got a basic cylinder down, you know, I mean, I could technically, let me hit F4, I hit Z to Z up on it. If I wanted to, I can bring this down. Maybe we only needed like 8 sides. Something like that. But we need enough height segments to kind of warp it. Now, a couple things I could do. I could manually warp it. I can throw maybe a, you know, a bend modifier. Let's go taper first, though. A taper modifier. I can kind of taper that out. Something like that. You know, I can throw a bend on it now, on top of the stack. So on my y-axis, you kind of, you know, I think it's at my z. Is it my x? Nope, maybe z. Okay, so it bends it a little bit, just like that. All right, from there, if I need to, I can actually collapse it. And I'm working with the stem here. You know, I can control this. If I throw a turbo, so I'm going to convert that to a poly, but if I throw a turbo smooth on it, you know, it's going to kind of round off. So let's go ahead and fix that up. So I'm going to just delete this face at the bottom, so when I turbo smooth it doesn't affect the bottom. Over here on top, maybe I'll just grab that. I'm going to throw a slightly inset on there, just like that. When I turbo smooth it, it kind of rounds off a bit. I can even chamfer it if I needed to. I can grab that edge and loop it. I can chamfer it now, just to split the edge slightly. You don't remember, when you chamfer, you never want to overlap your edge. Just like that. Turn on my turbo smooth. There we go. So now I can actually come back with my show end results turned on, and you know what, let's just go ahead and we can shape this out, warp it out a bit, you know, so it's not so perfect. You know, you don't want like a perfect looking stem. It just wouldn't seem right. So we'll just kind of, you know, just make it a little uneven, damage them up a bit. Now of course, if we wanted to, we could you know, collapse it. Take our soft selections again, you know, and you know, I can pick certain bring that down slightly. So we're working with a smaller area. You can kind of just fix those up a bit. Grab certain ones if you'd like. Damage those up. Maybe grab some here. Reposition. Hold on. Let me grab a few here. I'm just making this a little bit uneven. Like I said, your models are only as good as the time and effort, that you do to make things a little more, I guess, lifelike, realistic, I suppose. But yeah, just a little adjustments like this make the big difference. Alright, so now I can just place that right in there. Let's go ahead and grab him and just tuck him right in there, and we got somewhat of an apple. I think he's not floating, right? Let me make sure he's not floating. No, he's okay. And let me go ahead and just throw a gray shader on these, and there you go. We have a apple. Now, of course, we can group this. Let's call these apples. And then we can actually combine these into our still life scene. Maybe we need multiple apples. Kind of resize them and rescale them and maybe warp them out a little bit different. Alright, so now what we're going to do is take all what we modeled and just put it together. So I'm going to go ahead and save this out now. And then what we'll do is I'll see you next video where we're going to combine these all and render them out for, for the completion of the lab. Alright, let's go ahead and take all our objects that we've created and let's go ahead and merge them all together and create a scene. So I'm going to go ahead and scale these down slightly. And let's put that somewhere in the center here. There we go. Oops. I'm going to get rid of that background here. I'm going to hit Alt B and just uncheck display background from my front viewport. There we go. Alright, so far we got our apples here. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and merge my other file. So you got to go to File. So you go right here, File, Import. Let's go to Merge and let's look for here's our barrel. I'm going to open that up. Now, of course, I should have named this already. So I'm just going to go ahead and import that cylinder in, which is the barrel. And as you can see, where is it? Let's look for our barrel here. I don't know if it imported in. Let's try that again. File, Import, Merge, Barrel, open that up. There goes our cylinder. Oops, I forgot to select this, what it was. We'll press OK, merge the material. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and just scale that down a little bit. And let's line this up somewhere over here for now. Let me hit G key on that. I'm just going to raise that up. And you know what? I'm probably, for now, just going to quickly place these apples right on top of these barrels here. And let's scale that down a bit. We can probably reposition these later. I just want to get them on top of there. And you know what? These are, there we go. Let's see what we got here in our front viewport. Yeah, we got some pretty big looking apples. Let me get that so they're not just floating in the air. Always pay attention to your details. And we can probably angle that off a little bit. That's a huge apple. Let's make them a little bit smaller. There There we go. We'll bring him down. And I'll probably just align them over here somewhere, just for now. Alright, so we got our barrel and apples. Let's go ahead and merge in our import. Merge. Let's look for our wine glass. I'm going to open that up. And of course that's another cylinder. I'm going to merge, use merge material. There it is. I'm going to go ahead and scale that down. And let's bring him into our scene somewhere. Close to the... And let's go ahead and center him up over here. Now I'm probably going to scale that down a bit. In my front viewport, scaling it down. That's about right size. And let's align that properly. Just like that. Alright. And our last object would be our... Let's go import, merge, and let's look for our, I believe our wine bottle. Yep, so I'm going to open that up. There goes our bottle. I'm going to merge that in. Bottle's pretty big. Let's just go ahead and scale that in. You know, if it helps, I can actually take this bottle here. Alright, let me scale this down. If I wanted to, you can actually grab that object and just, there's this tool alignment, you can just align it to whatever, and you know, we can go position, it'll center everything up. Just press OK, and then of course I'm going to raise that up here. Alright, bottle's looking really huge. Let's just scale this down, and you know, relatively about size compared to the wine glass, so something about like that. Alright, and let's make sure our details, let's kind of position things properly. Let's Z up on this. Alright, there we go. We have a simple, make sure nothing's floating. And that's why we always do our test renders and stuff. Alright, so we got a simple still life. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate one more apple. Maybe just kind of rotate it a bit. There we go. Alright, and let's see. I'm going to crank this turbo smooth up just one last one so it's perfectly round. And I'm going to lay down a plane on the ground. Actually, instead of having a plane, I'm going to teach you a good way to make a seamless backdrop. So I'm going to take a line tool just like that, and in my left viewport I'm going to click here, I'm going to draw a line there, and then I draw a line right there. I'm going to convert that to a spline, and you'll learn more about splines in the future video tutorials. I'm going to grab this vertex right here. And you'll, like I said, you'll learn more about how this works. So I'm going to fillet that in just like that. As you can see, I just have a line drawn in there. Alright, with that I'm going to reset the pivot of that line. And I'm going to move that right down here to that point. As you can see, if I zoom up, I'm at the point of that line. I'll turn that off. Now with that line being selected, I'm just going to go ahead and throw a lathe modifier on it. And there's another video where I introduce you to the lathe tool. Alright, I'm going to hit F4 so you can see my edges. And I'm going to crank that up. So got a nice smooth, you know, scene here. Now I'm going to make that 180. And then just with that alone, I'm going to rotate that. Let's do it in increments too, so it locks into place. That's your, you know, angle snap toggle. It does it in increments. There we go. Alright, and I'm just going to kind of back that up on the scene. There we go. Alright, so now we have our seamless backdrop. You know, if you want, you can actually come back, you know, and grab this, take the line, the vertex of it, show your end results just like that, and we can easily just raise that up, make it a little higher. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick render now. So I'm making my lines all black here. Alright, so from here, I'm going to do my ambient occlusion render here. So I'm going to grab one of these shaders here, and we're going to make sure we switch our render setup to mental ray. So we're in the common tab, assign render, change the default scan line to mental ray, and then from here I'm gonna from here select that, select standard, and we're gonna hit M, look for the mental ray, there it is. Then from surface I'm gonna look for the ambient occlusion, so I'm just type AM, there it is. We're going to make this about 64. The more the samples, you multiply it by 2. So 16, 32, 64, 128. The further you go up, the more detail the shadows for your ambient occlusions. I'm going to go ahead and hit that 0 max distance. Otherwise it would have been blown out. Not sure why it does that on this version, 2011. Alright, so I'm going to go to Processing tab, hit Material Override, and we are just going to go to our parent level here, so this is grayed out, and we'll call this our AO pass, ambient occlusion pass, and then I'm just going to copy that right over here, make it an instance. That's by just clicking and dragging. You'll know it works when the name pops up. Alright, and then we'll go to the renderer, and I'm going to switch this to 1, and let's go 16, and I'm going to switch this to Mitchell. Alright, and let's go ahead and frame this up a bit, and we have ourselves a still life here. Let me get ourselves a camera angle here, and this looks pretty good. Alright, so give me a nice good, notice I have it off-centered. Sometimes you don't want to center things. It makes images more interesting when you're, when you're using your rules of thirds. So I'm going to kind of off-center it to the left here. And I'm going to go ahead and render that out. And as you can see, we have our still life. Looks like something's going on with our ground plane. Oh, I know what the problem is. Make sure we don't have any overlapping geometry. So I'm in my front viewport. All I'm going to do is take that vertex right here. I'm in vertex mode. Grab that. Just pull it out slightly, just like that. As you can see, if I really zoomed in, what was going on was we had these overlapping like that. So let's go back. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and zoom up just a little bit more. Something like that, and then we'll go ahead and render that out. Alright, and there you go. That is your still life, and I want you to save that out and post that up into digital vamp, or I'm sorry, Planet GTM forums. These are for my students. If you're just online watching these, hopefully you picked up something if you're just starting out on 3D Max. But anyways, hopefully, like I said, you picked up a few techniques. Alright, other than that though, I'll catch you in the next videos.